How to program your accessories when you have a primary SBD. Before I get into this video, I'm gonna give you like a brief overview of the primary SBD and the common reasons like why I'd be using it. And I have quite a few programs I'm going to show you of my athletes who do a primary SBD and covering how the accessories are laid out. And some of the key important things when it comes to a primary SBD, right, is I'm often using it when I am forced to use it. So for example, when I have an athlete usually squatting 3 days a week, benching 4 days a week, and deadlifting twice a week, it's very hard to avoid having an SBD somewhere in the workout, which just then leads me to having that primary SBD. But the biggest issue that comes with the primary SBD is it becomes a very long workout, right? It can take upwards of like 2.5 hours, right? And by the time you get to your accessory lifts, the effort given to them can be a lot less, or you just haven't got time to do them because you've already been in the gym for very long. So we have to be very selective in regards to what we put on that SBD. A big thing to note when it comes to accessories in general for hypertrophy is sometimes it can be hard to just have everything, in the system going at a good rate. What you'll see in some programs is the volume in certain areas might be low relatively. And the main idea is that I'm focusing a lot more on maintenance, so maintaining muscle mass in some areas whilst using the volume to progress other areas. For example, let's say I can only do 8 sets per week for, push and pull or chest and back, right? And if I did it evenly, I'd have 4 sets for chest, 4 for back. Those 2 volumes might not be enough for me to progress, right? Because they're giving me maintenance volume, like levels of like stimulus for each. But let's say my back is better than my chest in regards to hypertrophy. I've got a bigger back, small chest. What would be smart to do is lowering the volume for like back and putting more for chest. So doing like 2 sets to back, 6 on chest, which could still maintain my back whilst letting my chest grow. So a lot of the volume can be a balance of trying to figure out like what's the priority here and putting more emphasis in regards to volume and frequency for the things we want to be progressing, and putting lower volume and lower frequency to the things that we can afford to put on standstill because we are already like developed in those areas. So yeah, I've got a few programs I'm going to go into and I'll show you like how I program their SBDs and accessories around their splits. Let me throw this, what corner do I want to put this in? I put this in this corner. Okay, I just changed the wrong thing. I'm not editing this video at all, by the way, because I'll be very, very long. Okay, I put this here, make this larger, bada boom, bada bing. Cool, make this a bit smaller as well. So here we have Daniel, right? The top here, I've got, I think, 4 different types of program layouts. This one here is 3 days on, 2 rest days and SBD. So 3 days on, 2 rest days SBD. I think Renzo also has 3 days on, 2 rest days and SBD. This one is a 3-day split. So he trains 3 times a week, and I'll show you how I program his SBD for that low frequency. And I think all of these guys do 1 day rest day into the SBD. So Friday, Sunday rest, Monday SBD. Ryan does Friday rest, Saturday SBD. Lawrence does Friday rest, Saturday SBD. Miriam does Thursday rest, Friday SBD. And Prabhat finally also has a 1 rest day, but he has a 5-day split. And I'll go over like why he has that. Starting off with Dan. In this example, right, where we can program a primary SBD in a way that we're allowing 2 rest days going into the primary day. And this is good for people who don't require mainly a bench workout close to primary day. So for all these guys who have that 1 rest day going into the primary day, it's usually because they just require a bench stimulus closer to the primary day. And let's say this bench session here was on a Saturday. The 2 rest days going into the primary day might be a bit too much of a gap to carry over the stimulus very well. So this largely comes to 1, priming, right, for the bench press, and 2, we can often be forced into having that rest time if they squat 3 days a week. So for example, with Ryan here, he squats 3 days a week, right? And we have this squat session here on a Friday, 1 rest day into the primary day. and we could potentially have this squat session a bit earlier. The bench can't really go anywhere because he's forced to do this. But yeah, a lot of times we're forced to have one rest day depending on the frequency. Mainly if they have like a 3-4-2 frequency, we're sort of like forced to have this one rest day, which all these guys here have that 4-3-2, that 3-4-2 frequency, and that's why they have a one rest day going to the primary. Zoe's split is a bit more unique. I'll explain why her things are laid out in the way it is currently pretty soon. Starting off with Dan, right? My common framework when it comes to accessories is I'm having, well, first of all, I've got to go into like why are we deadlifting on this day and why are we doing squats on this day. When it comes to this, I'm mainly focusing on which lift needs more time or more gap in between them to like have them feeling very strong. And I often find that we want to keep the squats gap closer from a deadlifts one. So we have squat with a 2-day rest and deadlifts have a 3-day rest, right? So we got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then obviously the SBD on Saturday. That's the first thing. We could have deadlift on this day, right? But then we're creating another SBD, which can create another long workout. So that's why I tend to try and like separate these things here into different days, because we want to make sure the workouts aren't too long. When it comes to Dan and his accessories, we've got him doing like a pull workout here, I guess a pull workout here, and then these are both like pushes, as you can see, mainly push accessories. So that is a simple way of like programming 2 times frequency for the lifts. When you have an SBD, as I mentioned earlier, usually I only have 2 accessories on the SBD. I think when you get to 3, it becomes a bit of a drag. You can get 3 by like reducing the set counts here and potentially putting like another accessory that's only like 1 or 2 sets. But again, I try and make this session to only have 2 after, because you've already gotten through quite a lot of work. I think anything more than 2 tends to see a big drop off in effort in regards to those accessory lifts there. Covering all things very briefly because I want to show you examples, otherwise this video might be like an hour long. But yeah, quick example of his split is pull, pull, push, push. We tend to put most leg accessories on the Wednesday, and sometimes you can see me put leg accessories here on the SBD as well. One example, right? Another example is Charlon. So she squats 3 days a week and has this 3 on 2 off SBD split. Similarly, this is the old program there, but as you can see, she only has pull accessories on 1 day. She hasn't actually got any on this SBD. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes the volume can be a bit different depending on what areas you want to maintain and what areas you want to progress. Recently, I've been trying to see how far we can get with adding more hamstring work and seeing how that like impacts deadlift mainly. So we've been doing a lot more hamstring work and prioritizing that. If I wanted to optimize things for back hypertrophy, right, I would have this set here like move to the primary. Honestly, probably don't even need to have like hamstring curls twice a week. If you want to grow them, that would be good though. But if I'm progressing or focusing more on the back, I would have just volume move to the primary day, likely making this more sets, right? Just so we're like crossing over the minimum effective volume for hypertrophy here. So this is an example of what I could do here. I'm trying to think of anything else important. I don't think so. Push accessories again here, twice a week frequency. We are good. Let me undo all those changes so I'm not messing things up. All right, that's another example. Usually I'm doing like push here and pull, and then pull again on the SBD. I think I've got one example where I'm not doing that, and it could be Renzo's split. Yep. So Renzo, as you can see, is quite different, where he's doing pull accessories on day 1 and day 3, and then he's only doing like push accessories on the other 2 days. So push here and push here. Does have some also like hamstring work on this day as well. Yeah, another example of how I'm programming accessory lifts, keeping it at like 2, as I mentioned, not doing a lot of volume on the SBD because it can be quite tiring. So you got to be very smart about like what things do you want to prioritize hypertrophy wise. I'm usually having that on the SBD just to get a nice, gap in stimulus, because we looking at here, right, we've only got 1 rest day in between the 2, which means we have like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday where we aren't training back, which can be not as ideal when it comes to hypertrophy because of the big gap here in between the 2 days. So for things that you want to prioritize, right, I'm putting that on the SBD. And for Renzo, I want to prioritize like pushing accessories. So we have the bench press here and tricep work here, and again tricep on this day as well, because I'm really emphasizing on him trying to get stronger triceps and build up his bench. Alongside that, I mean, obviously I have got the high frequency as well with tricep dips on this day, but alongside that, right, is we need to think about how things here are going to impact the primary day in someone who might find themselves like being very fatigued with bench press, right? This is the main issue, because doing like machine rows and arms rarely ever impacts deadlift output. So no concerns with that. But the big thing that can impact your output on bench press is accessory lift. So if I'm doing accessories for push on this day here, that is usually when I make it like a bigger gap, right? So putting this session here on a Thursday for Charlon could be a bit not smart, just because we're now putting push accessories closer to the primary day that could impact her output on bench press. So yeah, we just learn from experience, right? You give it a try. You find yourself coming into this day fatigued in the arms, lockout is harder. It's a good sign that you want to have this day a bit further away from the primary. Into Amir, he has 3 days a week. And why do we do squats on this day and deadlift here rather than deadlift on this day and squats here? The main thing here, again, is how do I respond to spacing and volume, right? Amir responds better to having his squat days more compact. So he has like 1 or 2 rest days going into the primary day, right? For squats, deadlift, he can afford to have it further away and still come in very primed, right? Having this day any closer, having this day on here, which could be ideal, just means he has 2 SBDs a week, which can become very long and tiring. So I'm choosing to put deadlift further away just because I know he can still come in very primed and have a good primary day, which did show, in his peak as well. Like he had deadlift taper here, he came in the primary day still very strong and hit a PB of 235. So you just got to know like how much spacing you need between the lifts in regards to how your split should be structured, right? Accessory wise for him, as you can see, cable rows, lat pull downs twice a week, that's going to be good. He hits arms, I think, twice a week also, very good. And he also hits triceps also once a week. But obviously when you're benching, we're hitting triceps more than that. So he has like bench here, that's triceps. He has bench here, also triceps. So he's getting good amount of frequency in regards to every single movement in the body. No concerns here. Again, I usually have pulling accessories on this day, but he also has triceps on this day too, just because his split is obviously a bit lower in regards to how much volume we can put in each day, because he has less training days per week. Zoe, bit different here. Her split is, a bit different. She only has like arms accessories on the primary day, but she still gets in good frequency elsewhere. So she has pull downs here, rows here, pull-ups here, obviously chest here, dips, which is chest, bench, which is chest. So good amount of frequency in her split here. How long is this video so far? 13 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna try to get through it a bit quicker so you can see all the examples, but hopefully so far this makes a lot of sense in regards to how things are laid out. Why does Zoe, have her squat here and deadlift here? As you can see, after the primary SBD, she only has 1 rest day into deadlifting again. Ideally, I'd have her deadlift, right, be on this day here. So the gap between the two is a bit smaller. Or even having her squat on a Saturday. A big thing when it comes to like training splits is some days people can't train. So you have to like work with what days you can train, right? And yeah, she has a rest day on Saturday. So her split is in this manner. Deadlifts can go here, but the issue we found is that if deadlifts are here, her lower back tends to be get quite beat up, right? From having it here. She does perform a lot better having deadlifts on a separate day, and that is why that is on the day 1. Why not have, squats here and deadlift here? Like I mentioned for Amir, she performed better having the squat gap closer. So this might be a bit too long between her squat days, and for worse, deadlift having it here would make the primary feel better potentially, but the squat is a lot worse. So trade-off here isn't worth it, and that is why this split is more optimal for her, right? Having deadlift further away and the squat here. Getting into Ryan, I'll go a bit quicker for these ones. Pull accessories, as I mentioned, pull here, push, pull, simple stuff, no concerns. Pull, push, again, simple. I actually have, oh, it's actually a bit different. It's actually a bit different. He's got pull. This is more so like upper and lower actually in regards to his split. But I mean, example right here is like you can do a lot of different variations. Honestly, it's not like too important. But yeah, hamstring work here. That's twice a week. Frequency, triceps, shoulders. I don't tend to prioritize shoulder work a lot, but he has shoulders twice a week here. Shoulders here. We're gonna get a lot of like front delt work anyway from the benching as well. So we're good in regards to like frequency for that. I'll skip Mariam because it's the same. Prabhat has a lot of accessory movements in the split. So he actually has a 5th day in his program where he just does accessories to maintain a good frequency, right? If these things here are pushed onto other days, the workouts will become far too long. So even a good example for someone who like has 4 days a week and you want to have more volume, adding in like a 5th day, like for example on this split here, adding in like a Thursday where she's like hitting back would be a good way to counteract these long workouts. I'm gonna end the video here. I think I've gone through quite enough examples to make it make sense.